HEAT Finland is a non-profit and non-political association which aims to promote health, education, and integration of immigrants and refugees in Finland, specifically African immigrants. Mrs. Tamankak, if you are in the house, please give us a wave. Right, beautiful one out there. That's Mrs. Tamankak for you. Now moving ahead, he is the CEO and president of Citadel of Truth, Deliverance and Prophetic Ministry International. He is an apostle by calling, preaching and teaching the undiluted word of God. His ministry has also helped the youth to discover their hidden potentials through thorough guidance and counseling, seminars and conference, as well as mild empowerment programs for widows and eternally displaced vulnerable people in the society. He holds a BSc in political science, MSc in international relations, currently running a PhD program in international relations and diplomacy, all the way from Abuja, Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Apostle Elaila Kanos. If you are here, sir, give us a wave. Thank you very much. We honor
God bless you. God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you. We honor you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Now, also, Mr. Abel Sunday Ayodeji, he has his background in social services. He is a community development and integration expert. He's also a youth worker and a social service coordinator with experience in EU countries. He doubles as a financial secretary of AFAES RU Finland and chairperson of LINC Limited Ireland. If you are here, sir, Mr. Abel Sunday Ayodeji, give us a wave, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate.
You're very welcome.
Now we also moving on. She is a Nigerian-born barrister and solicitor with extensive experience in legal practice and community activism, working and empowering people at grassroots, local and national levels. As a diversity and inclusion worker, cultural advocate, national facilitator, she combines her experiences and knowledge to empower and support migrants to achieve their best in her country of residence. She also belongs to the International Federation of Women Lawyers. Woohoo! She is currently the National Program Coordinator in New Communities Partnership, NCP, which is an independent national network organization of more than 150 immigrant-led groups. She is in a person of Barrister Doris Abuchi Ogbonda. If you are here, ma'am, give us a wave. We honor your presence. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate. Also, I told you we have giants here in the house. Also, we have Christopher Mupenda Kitenge. He is the CEO of Staden Latus Malaus, a reputable painting company here in Finland, with a track record of prompt, dedicated, and quality service in the line of his duty. Christopher is the head of the youth organization of ACOFIN RU. ACOFIN RU is promoting integration and help with issues of administration of all Congolese living here in Finland. Mr. Christopher, if you are here, please give us a wave or a hello. Is he here?
He is here, but not in video.
Okay, that's right. And also, well, last but not the least, I have the privilege also to introduce Mr. Akin Akinsola. He is a member of the board of Think Africa RU. He's also on the communications and strategy team of Think Africa. Think Africa is a non-profit organization with the aim to engage, promote, and empower the African diaspora community in Finland and collaborate with individuals and organizations who have interests on the African continent. I will also introduce Mr. Hanu. Mr. Hanu is a local activist in Finland and also on the board of UPF. Right.
Thank you.
Please, I hope I have introduced everyone.
Apologies to everyone. I'm here. I'm hearing you. I'm gonna unmute myself. This is Christopher.
Come again, please.
I said I'm right here. I'm hearing you. And,
Okay.
I'm going to yes. Hello to everyone.
Okay, thank you. But we can't see you.
I'm gonna put my camera on just a second.
Okay, thank you. Right, and also we have the ambassador of South Africa, Her Excellency Carmen Smith, also with us on this platform. Your Excellency, welcome. We honor your presence, Mom.
Good afternoon, thank you.
All right, so, and of course, our cherished audience also in the house today, you're all welcome to today's celebration of Africa's Day. So we are moving on pretty much now. Time to welcome. I think my director is trying to tell me something, so please bear with me. Right. So we are moving on. I will want to introduce to the platform. Now time to have the welcome address. Let's hear and listen. Welcome address from Mrs. Fatima Usman and Mr. Keyo Mikanen, the organizers of today's event. Ladies and gentlemen, I present them to you. Mr. Keyo and Mrs. Fatima Usman, please unmute your microphones and the platform is yours.
Thank you. I just want to say welcome to everyone in this platform. My name is Fatima Usman, but a lot of people call me Mama Africa, and I think I prefer Mama Africa. Today is a very special day, and this special day was possible because of one wonderful man. He is white in color, but his heart is black. He's an African inside. And I just want to use this opportunity to thank him 9 years ago that he actually approached me to start this African Day. And I think we have been living in Finland for such a long time, but we have not thought about, starting an African Day or celebrating African Day, or then people have been doing it individually on their own. And I'm very glad that we also have Her Excellency, on the screen with us, for her to know at least the history behind the African Day. And we have a lot of things with this COVID-19 that is going on right now. We have a lot of challenges ahead of us. This organization started, I think it's 57 years ago, Nana, if I'm not mistaken. I think we made a mistake and said it's 58 years, but I think actually it's 57 years ago. So if I'm wrong, somebody should correct me. And we are still lagging behind as Africans. And I just want to speak from the perspective of an NGO and also Africans who are living in diaspora. Like, what can we do also back home? How can we bring light to all the darkness in Africa? How can we contribute also in agriculture, in education, so many resources. I mean, I saw the background of what Emma had there. She had like all the mineral resources in Africa, gold, coffee, and all these things. And when you look around today, if we are not careful with all the richness and the land that God has given Africa, Africa is a blessed nation. It's a continent that is blessed. But we have been taking it for granted because everybody wants to come to Europe or everybody wants to go to America. I was in Nigeria last year and I was asking myself, what am I doing here really? You see virgin land and we never take agriculture seriously. And then here we have the Chinese people bringing fake food to Africa. fake fishes, fake rice, fake oil, even going to China to cook African meal and bringing it to we in Africa to buy. We have to wake up. These are the kind of occasions that make us to speak about things like this that has to do with the African continent. Don't be too comfortable and think that, okay, because you are in Finland, or you are in America, or you are in Ireland, or wherever you are in Europe, or in Canada, you think you are okay. We have a responsibility. We have responsibility back home. If you can make a difference, which is the motto of AFAES, making a difference. If you can make a difference, think of one thing that you can do if you can change life. Think of how to support your own African brothers and sisters. I started, when we started our restaurant, we started supporting the local people that are producing food in Africa, the local farmers. Me and you can make a change. We don't need to have a middle person in between us to make that change. If African women, we have more women farmers than men in Africa, in the whole continent. If we don't start supporting, starting from the woman who goes to the shop, who goes to the marketplace to sell her tomatoes, if we don't start supporting people like that, then we are wasting our time. Because Africa as a continent need our help. And it has to start from me and you. We all have things to give back to the continent. I know that we are going to have great speakers that are going to speak and touch so many problems that we are facing, our ups and downs, and also our success. And I want to use this platform to say that this is what we have been doing from the NGO side, that we want to work with different institutes. And Emma, thank you for being here. We have a lot of people from different institutes here. We have also the diplomats here. So let's work together to see how we can make our continent great. We don't want to be depending on all these aids that are coming to Africa. We are too big for that. We are just too big for that. And Africa is the future. I was in a play called Zambezi, and in that play, unfortunately, I don't know how many people saw that play. That play was talking about, it was written by a Finnish director called Zambezi. I'm sure we all know the river Zambezi. And he's talking about the future of Africa. In the play, it was the Finns themselves that found themselves as refugees in Africa, in Zambezi. So all these things are coming in form of, theater performances. But I think it's going to be real someday. There are people who have seen somehow the future, and they are predicting Africa is the next place to be. Everybody will start going to Africa. I wouldn't take so much time. I would just like to introduce Mr. Keyo. And Mr. Keyo, I have this question for you. What was that thing that motivated you to start Africa Day, or to actually approach us as Africans to start this? Because you don't look like an African.
Thank you very much for the question. Actually, UPF was hosting this World Summit 2020, the first week of February, titled Interdependence, Mutual Prosperity and Universal Values, in which leaders from 172 nations took bravely part in Korea. And it happened just before this corona epidemic started to widen. Therefore, interdependence now is maybe more than ever before valid, and mankind is really one big family, and we all are put into a position to care more for each other over all different boundaries of religion, culture, race, or nation. And as being a Secretary General of UPF, which means Universal Peace Federation, there's peace in the middle, and universal means in the physical side and the spiritual side. In Finland, I wanted to start Africa Day celebration with someone who is even more connected with Africa, with single motivation to bring mutual learning an enriching experience for both sides, both realms, should I say. As a Finnish person, I wanted to ensure good governance and the rule of law in African continent as a basis for conviction to attain healthy socio-economic development for all Africans, supported, among other things, with good practices of Finnish society. My concern and consideration was that time, and is still, that we can and we need to learn from each other mutually. And I would like to warmly welcome to all of you for this 9th Africa Day celebration in Finland to enjoy our colorful and wonderful program titled Our Africa and My Next Step. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keyo and Mrs. Fatima Usman, but she says she prefers to be called Mama Africa. Thank you very much for your open address. Now let's hear keynote address from Mrs. Emma Tamankak, and it's on the role of Africa diaspora in building Africa. Welcome, Mrs. Tamankak, the floor is yours.
Thank you, my dear Nana, and I want to welcome all our viewers from all the corners of the world. I want to show my respect to all those who are watching at this point and all those who are in this platform. What I want to say is that before I get into talking about the role of the African diasporans, I want to remind us of a couple of things, what Africa actually is, because I think that the world has been painted a totally different picture of Africa, and it is our role, it's our responsibility to change the narrative. We should remember, or the world should remember, that Africa is the land of milk and honey. Growing up, I was constantly told that it is the land of milk and honey, and it actually is. This is the continent where everything and anything is possible, is available. It is the richest continent in the world. As you can see behind me, endowed with natural resources, the only continent in the world that has over 80% of its natural resources untouched. So the question is, where are we and what is it that we can do? The theme that we are celebrating today is Our Africa, My Next Step. So when I talk about African diasporans, I don't want to just dwell on those Africans Africans who were born or would live in the diaspora, but I want to include the friends of Africa. Because as you have all heard, the celebration of Africa Day that started 9 years ago in Helsinki, Finland, was initiated by somebody that's not from Africa. So when I talk about friends of Africa, I want to go back to Kwame Nkrumah, the great Pan-Africanist, who said, and I quote, that you are not an African because you were born in Africa. You are African because Africa is born in you. And I believe that, my dear Keyo and all the other friends of Africa, Africa is born in them, so they are Africans. So as we celebrate this great day, Our Africa, My Next Step, what is it that we can do as diasporans in general? And what is it that you can do as an individual? So we have to look at these different perspectives. But I do believe that there's something that we can all do. There's something we all should be doing. If we look at where we are today, we should ask ourselves, what is it that the diasporans can do so Africa can have its rightful place in the world stage? I have listened to great Pan-Africanists, wonderful role models. I don't know if you remember the former ambassador of the African Union to the United States. I don't know how many people still remember her. I don't know how many people remember Professor Lumumba. Those are great Pan-Africanists. We all Africans should become Pan-Africanists because we have come to a point where our survival is dependent on us, you know, taking that hat of colonialism that was placed on us, where everything has to be detected or dictated on us, where we cannot have confidence and trust in our own capabilities, in our own abilities, despite the fact that we have all the resources. It is time for Africans in the diaspora to stand up. And when I talk about Africans in the diaspora, I'm not talking about the first generation Africans, I'm talking about the second and the third generation Africans. Because what's happening is that we are at a very critical stage in our lives. If we don't do something at this point, what is it that we are bequeathing to the next generation? Because I think each and every one of us Africans in the diaspora, we owe it to our children. But what we need to do before we get there is to start educating people about Africa, is to start educating our children about the history of Africa. I grew up in high school. I never studied the history of Africa. I was doing European history. Why? I didn't have African history in the curriculum in high school. Was that hidden from us on purpose? We have to start by educating Africans. We have to, you know, because if we don't decolonize our minds, that's where the change is going to start.
Right.
So we have to decolonize our minds. There is nothing, otherwise we are going nowhere. We can sit here as Africans and start blaming each other. Oh, we don't like ourselves. Why is it that Africans are not united? It is all the game. It's all part of the plan to make sure that Africans and all the children of Africa are forever defeated, or we are forever second-class, even third-class citizens.
Right.
So I am throwing this to all the Africans in the diaspora because the education system, let's not forget that education has been used as a political tool in so many parts, in so many countries in Africa, to keep the truth from the children, from the young people, from the younger generation. I and you, we can think about the kind of system that we went through, what kind of education we were given or provided. Now we are in the diaspora. We are blessed that we can go through an education system that makes us more assets than liabilities. Right. We have gone through education system that we can be competitive in the world market. Now, as Africans in the diaspora, the question is, what are we doing with all of that education? There are so many reasons why people have migrated from Africa into Europe and America. So many reasons. Because we've had failed governments. Looking for greener pastures. Right. Let's not talk about the brain drain. So many brains, people with all kinds of capabilities, doctors, engineers that are in the diaspora. The question is, how can we as diasporas harness those resources for the benefit of Mother Africa? Each and every African, as we celebrate this day, is not just celebrating the day that heads of state came together and decided that, okay, we are going to speak with one voice. We should also be, you know, doing a flashback, a bit of retrospect. What have we achieved as Africans? Why aren't we united as the Chinese, the Indians, the Jews? What is it that this group of people are doing that we can benchmark it? Because Africa is capable. We are not talking about a continent that doesn't have all of these things. We have it and even more.
That's right.
Africa has never needed the world. The world has always needed Africa because of all the natural resources and all the kingdoms that we had. Why? What happened to all of those? So as I'm saying, that education is the first thing. And I want to challenge the diasporans that educate your children. Because if you bequeath to the next generation the same Africa that me and you grew in, and we are seeing today, then we have all failed. But if we educate our children to understand the history of where their parents have come from, then there is hope that even if we don't change things totally, we will start it, and the children, the next generation, will finish the job. Africans in the diaspora, like I said, we have the expertise. We've been educated. We have the capacity. We have the financial resources. We have to put that all together. But the number one thing that I think it's a barrier to all of this is because we are not united. We are not united. There's a saying that together,
That's right.
Together we stand, divided we are going to fall. Because even you as one person, it doesn't matter how much money you have in the diaspora, you will never be a European. It doesn't matter the passport. Home will always be home. It doesn't matter the level of education. It doesn't matter how much you earn a month. Even if you're a billionaire, home will always be home. So Africans in the diaspora, let us learn some of the things that I'm going to talk about today. Let us forget about our differences. We can differ as individuals, but when it comes to Mother Africa, because we are the children of Africa, when it comes to Mother Africa, we need to speak with one voice. When it comes to Mother Africa, we need to remember that we have to be each other's keeper. In this country, I see many people live here and say that I'm going to an African shop to buy food. But guess what? They are not going to an African shop. They call it an African shop, but it's an Asian shop. Why do we let other people tell our story?
That's right.
Why do we let other people tell our story? We can tell our story best. We can do it better.
I agree.
What we need to do is that we need to start to believe in each other. We need to trust each other. We need to forget about our selfish interest. We need to understand that unity is the starting point, is the foundation, is the end point actually. And that if we don't unite now, unity is so paramount to our survival as Africans in the diaspora and Africa, back as Mother Africa. I'm looking at all Africans that tomorrow we need to find a way to go back home. We have a responsibility as diasporans to build that continent. We have a responsibility that the money we are earning here in Europe, that we have all the brain drain, that we can give something back to Africa. I remember somebody asking me that, Emma, why don't you are in education. Why don't you open a school here? I said, you know what? It doesn't matter how much education I get here in this country. If I don't have a change, if I don't affect a change in my continent, then I have not benefited anything. Because what is it that the West needs? They have everything. But Africa needs us to develop. We have the resources, we have the financial capability, we have the expertise. Let's not let Chinese people be the ones to dig our roads, to tar our roads. Let's not let them be the ones to, having more doctors here than more doctors in Africa, and yet we complain. So let us quit complaining and ask ourselves that how can we put ourselves together as Africans in the diaspora to make Africa great? Because truly Africa can be great. But I don't blame us to an extent. I don't blame us to an extent. And as few seconds, I will round up now. I don't blame us to an extent because, like I said, that this was all by design. The divide and conquer, the divide and rule that is still affecting us. The fact that we were broken and we are still partitioned, that has taken a toll on us. So I say to all Africans that be an African and decolonize your mind. Let us start from there. Then there will be hope for us. So I want to thank all the Africans in the diaspora. First, second generation, third generation Africans. Remember that Mother Africa is looking up to you. Remember that Africa is the place where life started. Life began in Africa. Remember that Africa, we are beautiful people. We are intelligent people. We are very resilient. We have all there is no, God created us all. So we are not lesser human beings. And we shouldn't make others. We shouldn't make the worst thing with lesser human beings. Let's stand up for Mother Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mama Ems has spoken. Thank you so much for those words, man. They are bombshell. It's hard truth, and we must face it. Yes, it is true. That is Africa for you, and that is Africans for you, and Africans in the diaspora, that is for you. So wherever you belong, you know where it pinches, right? So let me go on the page, of course, and also acknowledge our viewers who are also coming in with their comments and suggestions. So we appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for the keynote address by Mrs. Emma Tamankak. Now, going on the page, so we said, Kuku, forgive me if I get the name wrong, says Africa is not dark. We are dancing the same song on new rhythm. In the meantime, as I'm trying to read the comments, who have the next on the program is goodwill message from Mr. Zwei Mbula. Zwei Mbula is an UN Ambassador of Arts for African diaspora, for the UN International, and for people of African descent. So the director would get that ready for us whilst I get on the page to see what our viewers also think about African celebration. Some, yes, I've already read this. Yes, we said we are poorly managed. Africa is the disconnect between forces on the continent and the forces outside the continent. Let's ask ourselves, what is our role in solving our dilemma? That is the question for us. And also coming through, Shisha Farrell says, exactly, but our education system is based on the ex-colonial system. We are taught about Western or Arab system, which doesn't benefit us at all. I think she's concerned about, this is in regards to what our keynote speaker was saying. Again, she says we need to change things inside Africa for our youth. And I strongly believe, again, we have everything what we need, but we need to learn to use our resources. Now, all the other nations are fighting who gets the control of Africa. That just shows how the world need us. True. We are the children of our forefathers who fought against slavery. If we don't take control of our continent, our forefathers died in vain. Very, very true. And says, thank you, Queen Mother. True words for Mrs. Tamankak out there. Again, another one coming through. It's not just Chinese. Take in consider how much Western or Arab companies are around Africa. And then Chinese just started investing, and Russia too. Indians are being islands and bringing their people in, but don't give work or to our people. Indians destroyed Victoria Lake in Uganda trying to build hotels, but they never took responsibility about their actions. You're watching the Africa Day celebration live on Nana's TV. This is Africa Day celebration in Helsinki, organized by AFAES, RU, and UPF here in Finland, joined by giants of Africa and of course non-Africans, as I put it. So yes, moving on in our celebration, and of course on our platform, we'll have goodwill messages from Mr. Zwei Mbula. As I earlier mentioned, he is an ambassador, UN Ambassador of Art for African Diaspora for the UN International for People of African Descent. Let's have a watch of that message.
Good day, compatriots. My name is Zwei Mbula. I'm a South African living in Norway. I'm an arts ambassador for African diaspora. I work with recognition, justice and development in the United Nations program called International Decade for Peoples of African Descent. I am also a musician, a producer, and an artist. I want to say to you today, my message is a message of unity, solidarity, and compassion. My message to all the artists and culture workers in the diaspora, in the African continent is, culture defines us. It extends from our inner selves to the groups of people who we belong to. The beauty of artistic expression is that it doesn't not require words or intellectual interaction. It is what everyone has in common, disregarding gender, race, or religion. We have to work with the continent. We have to contribute back to the continent. We have to keep the links back to the continent. I want to say to you again, Happy Africa Day. It is our time. We are on the move. May God bless Africa. I thank you.
Let's move on. Let's hear some of the challenges, we probably have heard, seen, or read about African displays during this COVID-19 epidemic. We want to look at some of the challenges that we may have heard, seen, or even read, even on social media. And when we see these challenges and we look at ways we can tackle, with our organizations or, as individuals. So first of all, I will throw this question. I would ask Her Excellency Carmen Smith to set the ball rolling. Your Excellency, what are some of the challenges that has come to your office as an ambassador, with regards to Africans displaced during this COVID-19 crisis? The platform is yours, ma'am. Briefly, please.
Good afternoon. Some of the challenges that are faced in the diaspora would be to be repatriated. I deal with South Africa, so we've had a lot of repatriation requests. Well, we, even in Europe, repatriation is not fully paid for by the government. And there seems to be an expectation that the government, to some extent, have to pay for it. But the government is the facilitator to ensure that it can do whatever it can to get its citizens home. But unfortunately, during COVID-19, borders are locked all over the world. So even if you want to bring your citizens home, you have to negotiate with the rules and regulations of another country. And that there's different rules that was not there before. And so it creates a misunderstanding among citizens on the ground, thinking that governments are not doing something about it. But also we have to protect our own citizens at home from the disease. And so therefore, be in place to deal with that. So it's a very complicated situation for everybody globally to deal with. And the African Union is working very hard as a collective to deal with the general situation within the continent. Recently, in April, they established the African Solidarity Fund for COVID response, so that they can respond to the people in the different countries' needs and health needs, and even obviously food needs within the continent. Secondly, they've also called for debt cancellation, because the debts that the countries incur because of the world system, it poses a challenge, because you have to pay back, and you have to pay back that money, which then in turn doesn't go to the actual fiscal, because to deal with the issues for your citizens. And they therefore have called for debt cancellation. I know there's been huge debates globally on that, so that they can then take that money and resources and divert it to the needs of COVID-19. The African CDC has also accelerated its approach to increase testing. In that regard, I must say that African countries have been doing rather well with the limited resources in terms of testing.
Right.
If you make a comparative analysis to what is happening globally, they've actually really been doing quite well. And then if you make a quantitative analysis of the numbers versus the population numbers, the increase has been very limited so far. Part of the challenges is, lastly, part of the challenges is, this year the theme is silencing the guns. Most of Africa is moving forward, developing.
Right.
But there are still pockets where we have instability and wars going on. So how we deal with the silencing of the guns, what we do around that in the continent and in the diaspora becomes important. And lastly, how it's easy to say that the continent don't have a plan. The continent has the AU 2063 agenda. It rolls out a whole lot of plans. How do you, as the diaspora and as internationals, latch on to what the continent is actually asking for? Because those on the ground know better.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Excellency, for adding your voice on that issue. Same question I would like to hear from Mr. Elaila Kanos, all the way from Abuja, Nigeria, from Citadel of Truth. Hello, sir. We would like to hear some of the challenges from your end as a minister of God. What are some, of the challenges that you may have encountered, in your office as a preacher or as a teacher that the Africans, are faced with in this crisis of COVID-19?
Okay, thank you very much. I want to say a very good afternoon to everyone. Yeah, first of all, in this part of Africa, it's actually very pathetic because ever since the COVID-19 issue came up, it's been politicized, so much so that a lot of persons that were supposed to be in charge of ensuring that the less privileged or the vulnerable ones, get a good succor in this season. Most of these persons are actually diverting the funds that is meant to help the vulnerable ones. And so, secondly, the issue of the healthcare system that has been on ground even before the COVID-19, it was never favorable to anyone. Even as a spiritual person, of course, no matter how well you pray for people that have, health issues, at some point you would still have to recommend that, they still visit the clinics or, the hospital to ensure that they have, a sound healthcare system. But most of these things are actually, major issues here, especially in Nigeria, because most of the guys that are supposed to, ensure that we have a healthy healthcare system, they always go abroad to take care of their health and even their families too. So it's been really, really crazy over here. And so what the common man knows basically is just prayers. And you see, the Bible says pray or faith without work is death. And so basically, as much as we know that prayer is very good, it is very good to be spiritual. It is very interesting to be a believer and all that. It is good to release your faith. But much more than you releasing your faith is to have, an environment where your faith can be seen, evident, and it can match up with the work that you're doing. Now, when you pray and after praying, you meet a dysfunctional government where they don't care about how you feel. They're very, they get too ethnic with their reasoning, and so the issue of ethnicity and greed and selfishness and all that, it has actually taken over the system. In fact, even the figures that we're getting lately about the COVID-19, it's been politicized, and it's all because they have seen that to a large extent the COVID-19 issue has attracted the support of the World Bank and so many other financial institutions. Shame. So rather than helping people to ensure that they are out of this menace, they are rather putting more persons in a bigger danger. And so it is safe to say at this point that what kills people even more, especially here in Nigeria, is the hunger virus. So much more than the COVID-19 issue is the
Hunger
issue of
virus.
hunger. Yes, the hunger virus.
Yeah.
And you know, a hungry man is an angry man. You know, and so considering the fact that people cannot afford a meal a day, you know, that on its own, it's enough to claim the lives of people. So I won't be surprised if they see they are seeing dead bodies everywhere and all that. It is actually not tied to the COVID issue. It is basically, you know, heated on poverty, hunger, and, you know, a high level of depression. People are depressed, they are frustrated, and so there is no room for them to express themselves. The government are taking advantage of them even much more. You know, so we that are spiritual persons, it becomes very difficult for us.
It's rather unfortunate. It's a shame. I mean, hearing this coming from Africa, we're doing this to ourselves. It's rather embarrassing to hear this. Mr. Abel Ayodeji, can you take the stage now? Let's have your opinion where you are. What can you say about some of the challenges that Africans are going through, you know, in view of COVID-19? Welcome, sir. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Madam Nana. Thank you so much. And for the organizers of the program, I say a big thank you as well. I reckon, and I, of course, agree with all the things that have been said by the earlier speakers, and of course by the man of God as well. In my opinion, as a member of staff of AFAES, we've seen an enormous weight on every sector, on the public sector, on the third sector, even on the private sector. But we see this now because there's a wake-up call. These obvious things have been triggered by the pandemic, but the underlying fact is that these issues are there. People hardly feed. They can't afford to feed. They can't afford the 3 square meals. And that tells us that some things are not working. The public sector is not doing its job. The private sector is they're only concentrating on the amount of wealth they are able to accumulate as profit comes in. So a massive burden is being placed on the third sector, which is the churches, the families, the NGOs, and which are not able to carry all this. But I would say during this period, we've seen a pattern, which is that the main problems we're encountering now during the pandemic, however, is not actually caused by COVID-19 itself, but it only shows the dysfunctional political and social system which we're working on. And this crisis fundamentally alters the political and economic as well as cultural lives of people. And like I said, it's a wake-up call in sense that it's an eye-opener for us. It let us know that there's no backbone. We don't have nothing to rely on. Imagine as beautiful, as richly blessed as Africa as a continent is. Africa can't feed Africa. Africans can't feed. We are not producing enough basic things of life like security, like electricity, like food, for God's sake. You can see that the Africans in diaspora are doing a lot when you consider the amount of remittance that goes back home. But Africa needs more than that. Africans are not depending on peanuts anymore. We as Africans in diaspora needs to be more structural in our contribution to our motherland. Like you see other countries when they emigrate because of different reasons. They think of going back home. But we have to start thinking of, if we think of going back home, what are we going back on? We're just criticizing the government. I'm not supporting the government, but as individuals, as citizens, we have to step up the game.
Yes.
We need to go back.
Thank you so much. Let me give the chance to Mr. Akinsola from Think Africa. Before you take the stage, Mr. Akinsola, I know we have audience also on the platform. I salute you all. Thank you so much for your time. There'll be time for you to also ask questions and, of course, also bring chip in your opinions. You are not forgotten. You are truly loved by me. I can assure you that. So please hang in there for me. And also our viewers online, Deborah K. Fumi Mpapa, thank you so much for your time. Haja J. Sassi, thank you. Emilienne Grace, thank you so much for your time. And Eve Musembi, thank you so much. And everyone Josephine Atanga, thank you so much. I'll come back and of course acknowledge all of you. Let me come back to the platform where I have Mr. Akinsola from Think Africa. Let's have your opinion briefly, sir. Welcome, the stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll be as brief as I can be. Yeah, I think that like everybody has submitted, we have very many problems that are caused by this, the pandemic, and by other things as well. I think one of the things that we can also talk about is that the problems that we had on ground before the pandemic have been, you know, that have even been deepened by the pandemic. For example, this, not finding food, and those kind of things are things that were already there before the pandemic, and they just been brought to the fore. They've been deepened by the situation. So I think that it's difficult for us to talk about, you know, the problems or the challenges that we're facing because of the pandemic without referring to things that we were facing before the pandemic as well. So I think that a more robust approach would be, what are the challenges that we have, you know, so that if something like this will happen again, say in the future, we are better prepared to face them. And it's not only an African thing, as I'm sure that everybody knows, that the whole world is facing this, and this is unprecedented. So we don't know what to do about it as humans, as a species, generally speaking. So yeah, so I think that the angle I want to bring in is what are challenges that we faced before this that have, you know, exacerbated by this pandemic. Not that maybe not what things we face now because of it, because many of the things that we face because of it are actually things that were pre-existing conditions, so to speak, if I could use the term, the parlance of the people who are dealing with the pandemic itself. So we had pre-existing conditions, and those things were made even worse by, you know, by this. So I think that that's an angle that we might, you know, want to explore as well. I think that.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for your take. And now I'm moving on to Mrs. Doris Abuchi Ogunda from New Communities Partnership, all the way from Ireland. The stage is yours, ma'am. Let's have your opinion.
Okay, thank you very much. And like the last speaker said, it has to be put in context. What COVID-19 has just done is amplified what we already know, both for Africans in diaspora and Africans back home. You know the proverb, I am because we are. So tell me who amongst us here, including Keo, you might have a family member who's living outside of, you know, Europe. So you're not happy. In fact, the challenge for Africans in diaspora is that they are multi-impacted, because they're going through what's going here and they're going through what's going back home, and they're going through, you know, because of movements of African. So for me, I look at it from a very objective perspective rather than subjective. It was unleashed on everybody without plans. But what it highlighted is our reasoning, you know, the Africans pathway. It highlighted, one, the kind of jobs we hold. And so you'll find that economic impact would be huge on migrants and African migrants because of the sectors they work in. And those are the sectors that is most impacted by COVID-19. Again, our belief system. Some of us have lost what it was that made us Africans, the community spirit. You know, we have imbibed new spirits that makes us a little bit careless, I would say. So a lot of people from the outside, diaspora, not diaspora, Africa, would tell you coronavirus does not exist. So our belief system and the way we accept things and respond to them is a huge challenge. So for me, those were critical and those were things that were coming through. And for me, as a community-based person, as a community support person, you know, even independent of my organization, because, you know, we've been off work, but that's what's coming through. So the belief system we hold and the levels of economic empowerment and where we get them, all those has been shaken. So those are challenges. And in effect, a speaker here had mentioned remittance of money. It multiplies, it has a multiplying effect because it affects you here, it affects the people back home. So those are challenges. We've heard of Africans being evicted from homes in Gazua, if I pronounce that well. And what it tells us is that it just amplified how the world views us, you know, and for us to go back to our roots and remember, first of all, who we were, what made us what we are. We are resilient people, all right? We have a spirit of giving. We're happy to, you know, work hard and do all that. So we need to go back and rethink that. So that's where I leave that.
Thank you very much, Barrister Doris, for sharing your opinion on that matter. We are moving on. So now we're looking at this. In view of these challenges, what would you do to suggest as the most and second most important step for your organization to do in order to improve the living conditions of people where you live and act now? No, not entirely about COVID-19, but Africans as humans. I will start with Mrs. Emma Tamanka.
Thank you, my dear sister. I'm a very pragmatic person, so I want us to look at a couple of figures because then that helps us to understand the magnitude of the problem we are dealing with.
Right.
If you look at Africa, the last time I checked, we have about 25 million refugees, or then those who are asylum seekers or internally displaced persons. And the unrest in the continent has just exacerbated the situation, which means that there's a big task ahead of us, considering the fact that we have a healthcare system that has been overstretched and accessibility is almost non-existent in so many parts of Africa. So what I think needs to be done is that, because when you look at the internally displaced people, even, or you know, the refugees in general, whether it's COVID-19 or not, most of these people are placed in makeshift camps where there is really less, they don't get food, enough food, there is less or accessibility to water, sanitation basically is very poor, and that is already a breeding ground for not only COVID-19 but other kinds of infectious diseases. So I think what we need to do, like I said, we in the diasporans, I always come back to us, because at least we are a better place. We have the resources. Even those who have been stripped out of their jobs because of the COVID-19, at least they are able to get some support somehow. So what I think is that it is our responsibility as diasporans to, you know, support our brothers and sisters back home who are less privileged in whatever way we do. But it's important that we do it as a community effort. You know, I believe in little drops making an ocean, that when we come together, put our resources together, nobody ends up doing a lot, but we collectively can do something that is that's huge, you know. So I would start with first of all making sure that people in those makeshift camps, because there are those camps, it's not fiction, that they get proper access to water, sanitation is good, then that their mental health can be taken care of, because I think that's one of the areas that is very dormant. So how do we support them in that way? So every small organization, HEAT is just one of the many organizations, for instance, in Finland. But what I think is that how can all the different organizations that are there for Africans, how can we put our heads together and form a united front? Because when you form a united front, like I said, the impact is felt. It's not just a one-person thing anymore. It's not just you're in Nigeria, you have the problem, Cameroon, you okay, Ghana, you know, and that, but that we look at ourselves as, you know, children from Mother Africa, and that way I think that we will be able to make you know, huge steps ahead. But let us start from within. Everybody asking themselves, what little part can I play? How much can I chip in? You know, there are many ways we can support, but we have to support the less privileged back home to be able to you know, go through this whole, you know, process, the pandemic, and of course other things that's affecting the people's health and life in Africa.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Tamanka, for sharing that. Of course, with HEAT, no two ways about that. Let me go also to Mr. Christopher Kitenge as an entrepreneur. Let's have his opinion in this regard. What would you suggest, you know, as an entrepreneur, that we can do, the steps in order to improve the living conditions, you know, of Africans where you are, where you're living presently? What can you suggest, or second most important things that we can do to help, you know, help the conditions of people where you are? I'm sorry, I don't know. I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can get, yes.
All right, great. Yes, as I said, it's a good question. And well, as a person who lives here in Finland, the government has a good measures that they have set to help the people. So I don't know if there is like anything different that I may say that can help anyone here in Finland concerning these things that we going on, this pandemic that is going on right now. So I don't have much to add to what we already know.
Okay, then let me leave from being an entrepreneur and let's face the AFAES. You are the head of AFAES youth. You are the head of the youth organization of AFAES, that which is the Congolese organization. What can you do? What is your organization doing, or can do, or can suggest to help the living conditions of people in
the only thing that we can do is just educate the people, speak with the people, and mainly it's good to speak with the youth, the young people, because they are the ones who can really educate their parents at home. Because as we know, African people were very stubborn, and of the time we don't really take advices from people who are from the outside, so to speak. So my way to make a little different is to speak with the younger one, and to educate them, to tell them the measures and the truth and what's going on, and so on, so that they can make to bring the news back home, and in that way we try to see that everyone are in a good place.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I would like to go to Mr. Hanu, also on the platform. Mr. Hanu, would you like to add your voice on this matter?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm very impressed about the multiple views that has been presented so far, and starting from the passionate appeal from Mrs. Emaga, and she being as a very pragmatic person, she brought up very important aspects. Also from many of you, from my point of view, is that when I look at Africa, it was mentioned here, it's such a rich continent with a lot of natural resources. But when I talk with my African friends here in Finland and also from other countries, the clear thing that is needed is actually education. It was mentioned here very clearly that in order to process all the riches that exist in Africa, you need vocational education. You need people who are able to process the resources so that you can export highly produced products instead of just raw materials. So Africans should not let others take your raw materials, but you should process it themselves. That requires education, vocational education. It needs quality management and administration so that the system can work and produce wealth in the nation. And I think the young people in Africa, they really deserve to have hope in their own countries through a good functioning education system. And I feel that the expatriates here in Finland or in Europe at large, what you can dig and from here is get the education and get the professionality, and that's what you can also, with that education, you can guide young people or even grown-up people in the countries and to make a good management. Because I read just a few months ago a very good prospect from African Development Bank, and there was a very good list about the things that is needed. And the second most thing is actually functioning electricity, and it was mentioned here also water, sanitation system, all those things. The environment, the system that helps people to develop wealth in the country. I'm sure there are many other things, but I'm really inspired. All these points actually were mentioned by several of you, so I'm very inspired. I think we just need to have a good connection with each other and start some ongoing project, and like Think Africa and some other projects are already doing a lot. So let's support those. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hanu. Very, very appreciate. Also on the line, we have Daddy Jesus Willie. I'll take your comments, please. Have patience with me. Josephine Atanga, Rita Costama, thank you so much for all your comments that are coming. And of course, the audience on the platform, I know you're also ready to, you have questions and comments that you would like to give. We'll give time for all of that. But in between that, I would like us to go for a quick commercial break, a quick break. When we return, we will round up with a panel discussion and go on to our panelists, of course, audience on the platform. We give them also the opportunity to also air their view. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. Please don't go anywhere. We are still here.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. And warm greetings from the South African Embassy's official residence in Helsinki, Finland. This year, we celebrate Africa Day here in Helsinki under fruitful development of Africa. Every year, we celebrate Africa Day on the 25th of May, and it's in commemoration of the OAU, Organization for African Unity, established in 1963, which was later replaced by the AU. The theme for the AU this year is silencing the guns, creating conducive conditions for Africa's development. Also faced globally with COVID-19, Africa has come up with a joint action in combating the pandemic and its impact on the continent. The Africa Day this year is being celebrated differently in virtual space to save lives. Therefore, I want to reiterate, social distancing, self-isolation with limited movement, and practicing of good hygiene by using a mask, sanitizing and washing of hands. In the deliberations today, I would suggest that you also focus on the following: how you can support the AU silencing of the guns program, how you can build the economy of the African countries through partnerships with locals in the continent, how you can find ways to advocate and support the African Solidarity Fund for COVID-19 response. And lastly, but not least, I would like to invite you to partner with us with your expertise and innovation as in line with the African Continental Program. So with all that being said, I want to wish you well in your discussions and engagements. I also want to wish you great enjoyment in the program being offered, showcasing the beautiful sounds of Africa and the cultural diversities that Africa has to offer. Happy Africa Day.
Of course, brought to you by AFAES RU and UPF channel by Nana's TV Finland. Now we are still on the panel discussion and we're talking about Africa. Well, of course, we've talked about the challenges that Africa has faced with regards to the COVID-19, and now we're looking at the ways and means that our organizations and of course as individuals we can do to help, of course, in a way to manage, if I should put it that way, to help us to become better people, of course, wherever that we may find ourselves. So we are moving on, and I would like to throw my next question to Mrs. Doris Abuchi Gonda, because I know why I'm going straight to her. My question is, what are the platforms or channels of communication that we can consider the most effective for our organizations to reach a sustainable goal with respect to Africans, and of course, Africans in diaspora? Mrs. Barrister.
Yeah, it's very clear. It's very clear. I wear different hats, so I will share from some of those experiences without committing to one organization. Okay, and this is from Graham. If we look at what's happening within communities today, it's good for us Africans to also emulate. Within communities here, settled communities in Ireland, that is our host communities, there were small groups, local groups, estate groups that set up. Do you need to buy something? Are you sick? People are happy. They don't need to know you. People are happy to support you. Africans need to begin to link into that. A lot of them isolate themselves and remove themselves from that. We have Friends of Africa. We have people like Kijo amongst us here in our host communities, happy to support, to welcome, and to include us. So we need to take those opportunities. And that was the greatest challenge and the difficulty I had, because I wondered, how do you know who needs support to reach? And that's because, again, we've disconnected from our community. That community spirit is lacking. We've become so distrustful of each other, even in diaspora.
Right.
Yeah. So we need to link in. And African, for me, I actually provide support not just to Africans, to every migrant in Ireland. That's in my day rule. But within the communities, I also reach out to people. During this COVID-19, people have contacted me, one-on-one. We need to take it one person at a time. We need to rebuild trust. We need to rebuild faith that I am not here to outshine you, or that I've not achieved more than you in Europe, which is the difficulty in the African community. The African community also need to take advantage of available resources. The government is doing a lot. I couldn't tell you how many online courses I have done. We need not just to go to school, practical things that you need to survive on a daily basis. We need to begin to ask questions, to share that information amongst ourselves. If you share to WhatsApp is there. I belong to 1 million WhatsApp groups. Every information you share, you reach out to people directly and say, look, I think this is good for you. I think you can do this, and encourage people to come out. Right now, people are feeling embarrassed. People are ashamed. So, they isolate themselves. It's to reach out and say, look, we're all in this together. And I think we can rebuild that community spirit and make changes.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm moving on to Mr. Akinsola from Think Africa. Let's have your opinion, sir. What can we do with your organization? What are some of the platforms or channels of communication that you consider, can help,
All right. Yeah, thank you again for the question. I think that one of the things that we do in my organization is that, because we try to focus on the fact that one of the things that we suffer from this pandemic and this lockdown is that people don't get to meet each other anymore physically.
Yeah.
You can't visit a friend, or you can't go for coffee and things like this, and we can have these things virtually as well. So we have time regularly that everybody comes in virtually on Zoom or on Slack or whatever it is, and we have like a video or an audio call, so we can we can commune together. Like Miss Doris said, we forget that one of our strengths is the community that we have and the way that we've all been raised. So this lockdown has hit the community very, very badly, and we try to keep that going virtually so that we don't nobody drops off into depression or into negativity, because we face with each other regularly, and we meet virtually, and we keep that light going so that nobody fades away because of this lockdown. I think that's one important thing that we can do, and we can do it immediately in our different societies.
Thank you very much. Before I go to Mr. Elaila Kanos, let me also go on the line. Bubakar Yanko says, it's only when we are united Africa will be great. Presidents should look at the citizens of Africa and its citizens. Rwanda is an example to many African countries. Wara Pius, thank you so much for joining us. Please, I will take all of your comments. Please hold on for me. So yes, I go back to Mr. Elaila Kanos Apostle. Please, let's have your opinion. What are some of the channels of communication do you think it will be appropriate for your organization to reach a sustainable goal as an African?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, again, I would like to talk from the standpoint of a believer. Yeah, basically every human being has potentials in him. And so the first point of call is for you to believe in yourself. You know, because if you don't have belief in yourself, even the prayers you'll be doing will be in futility. You know, and then much more than, you know, believing in yourself and, you know, going out for prayers, you must ensure that your talents are being harnessed and then you put it to work. You know, so as much as, of course, in my organization, we, you know, counsel people and pray for people and do a lot of deliverance for people, we still help them to understand who they are. And we also help them to know their hidden potentials so they can pick it up from there. But the major obstacle at this level is the fact that so many persons have been injured spiritually. Yeah, what I mean by this is the fact that, you know, they've been indoctrinated.
Right.
Who have, you know, they've been carried away by some strange prophetic utterances that have stagnated their life. You know, they've been deceived, they've been tampered with, their mindset, you know, is twisted. And so they don't have confidence in themselves again. And the whole idea behind that is for them to, you know, be in total submission to a particular spiritual figure. And so people need to begin to unlearn, you know, certain doctrines so that they can align themselves to the will of God for their life. So I think if that is done, you know, and if it's done in the right way, then at that point, the next step, you know, can now be visible.
Right, and I think I agree with you on that point, because I would say some or most you know, spiritual pastors or, you know, spiritual men of God have misled a lot of people, especially Africa, misleading them into thinking that, you know, without prayer they are, I mean, they cannot do anything.
They can't succeed, yeah.
Exactly, their brains are dead. So I'm glad that hearing this from you as a man of God, that it's not only always about prayer, but it's about you also using your mind and not allowing someone to, you know, lead you as a scapegoat, or, you know, to destroy your life. So I'm really glad that you share in that opinion. Let me also ask from Mr. Abel Sunday Ayodeji. Thank you so much, sir. Let's have your opinion.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Nana. Concerning that, I'm going to be a bit very practical on this.
Please,
and,
flow.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm still looking at the aspect where we talk about education. Africans are very educated. When I hear Africans need education, I'm like, do you know how many educated Africans we have all over the world? We need to stop hiding behind we don't know. People need, the part of us that are well educated, what are we doing with our education? We have the resources, the capital, what are we doing with those? Our remittance needs to be well structured. As part of the third sectors, where we have the churches, the families, even the NGOs, we need to start collaborating with private sectors, with investors, with entrepreneurs, and structure our remittance not only to our families. Like we blame our political leaders because they are self-centered, they only look after themselves and their immediate families. Aren't we doing the same? Are we reaching out to our communities? If we can start structuring, not just giving money to my father and my mother, how about if I build a bakery in the society, in their wee village? How about if we look at what the schools need, so that our remittance could be more structured and more impactful in Africa? And this, we have all the things we need. We need to bring trust back. So many people can't be trusted because they've been wounded several times. They don't even trust themselves no more. we need to start afresh. COVID has given us a high opener. We should go back, restructure our remittances and do them. If I open a wee company or a factory, if I treat my employees right, you will see their mental state will be coming right. They know, okay, they can be treated right. Not all male bosses are after sleeping with their female workers. Not all people are after to cheat you or to treat you bad. We can do this, and we have everything. We have the education we need. We have all the resources. We just need to look inwards and restructure our remittances. That's what I think.
Thank you very much. I would like to go to Mr. Mupenda Kitenge Christopher. From what Mr. Abel, Mr. Ayodeji has said, do you agree, or you share in the same opinion as an entrepreneur, as a CEO?
Yes, definitely. And as the gentleman said, that we are educated. You know, we as African people, we are very educated, and but the question is that what kind of education we have, and how can we utilize what we have right now? Because from my point of view, from where I am, being a young man, I mean a man right now who grew up in Finland, understanding from where I'm coming from, and to see the current situation generally in Africa, it makes you really think about the reality that we are living right now. And from what I'm seeing right now, the education, it is a problem, and the education that we are valuing is not serving us at all. And I remember it was the madam who said there that that, you know, in Africa right now, there is many people who are suffering. Yeah, there is nothing that the government is doing to them, and we who are here outside the continent, we don't have the mind to invest to Africa. Young people as myself, we don't have the discussion where we speaking about, hey, you know what, we need to do something in Africa. And there is a reason for that, because when we are growing up here, we don't get educated in understanding and loving who we are and where we're coming from.
Right.
And even our parents, they don't invest time to teach us the value of the land, of the continent that we are from. And that is a big problem that we have right now. Many young people, we have many generations right now here in Europe who are very educated, most who have money. If it's not even about money, but they have money, they have everything that we need, but they are lacking the mind of understanding where we're coming from and how valuable that is. And that is the problem.
That is a problem indeed. That is, I think I share in that opinion. I'll go to Mrs. Emma Tamankak briefly, and then we'll go to our viewers, I mean, our audience on the panel. Then we leave the platform for you to, of course, give you the chance, the opportunity also to chip in here and there your opinion, or if you have questions for any of the panelists, this is the time we can do that, and then we will take our last question for the day. But before I go to Mrs. Emma, we say majority of our African brothers and sisters, both on the continent and abroad, are gullible because of ignorance. Education is not the ability to read and write exclusive to a limited amount of individuals. We have educated leaders mismanaging resources. There is serious disconnect within and without our continent, which is very true. Thank you, Wisa, for sharing this with us. Mrs. Tamanka, please, you have the floor. Let's have you your opinion briefly before we go. I go to my beautiful audience on the panel. Let's see if they have a word or two for any of the panelists. Please, Flo.
Yes, I really want to thank the last speaker and of course all the other speakers concerning this the issue of Africa. I think especially the last speaker touched something that is really important. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I said that education has been used as a political tool, you know, to keep us Africans, you know, in born darkness. Actually, some of the education that we got back home, we need to educate some of that, the knowledge that we got, because it's useless in today's 21st century. So what we need to understand is that when they talk about education, and again, I want to challenge all Africans in the diaspora, we have to start. It doesn't matter, like my brother Kuku said, it's not going to school having the degrees, but it's about decolonizing your mind. How do you think as an African? What does Africa mean to you? Do you feel that because we grew up and they made us to understand that anything black is inferior? Am I right? It's bad and inferior. And you can see that reflecting in some of the way we behave, how you would treat, you know, a Caucasian, in relation to how you would treat another African. So we think that everything that is African is inferior. We have to start by taking that out of our system, which means that if we don't do that, our kids will suffer the same. It will be a vicious cycle. So please, my fellow brothers and sisters, let us start by the education we need is to decolonize our mind, to know that Africans, everything Africa is as beautiful as everything white or everything Asian. You understand? We are no lesser people. And what I want to say, and I will be in all honesty, we all want change in Africa. But for any sustainable change to happen in Africa, the diasporans will have a very big part to play. It can't happen without the diasporans, because the diasporans, like I said, they have the expertise, they have the financial resources, they can fund projects. We have to start learning how to develop Africa. I would say again that let's write our story. Let's tell our story. Let's not let others tell our story. It doesn't work like that. So as you go home, my fellow diasporans, tell your children, for every child, every boy, every girl growing up, let them know the history of Africa. Let them know that black is beautiful, and everything black is as beautiful as everything white. We have the same God. We don't know the color of God. We don't know the color of the heart. We all have the same heart. So there is no reason, because our kids, I have 4 children, and we have to struggle with this all the time. You know, the forces out there is very strong than what you're doing inside. So parents have a huge task. We have a huge responsibility, because like I said, let's bequeath to the next generation a better Africa, a more sustainable Africa, a more stable Africa, economically, politically, you know, with proper infrastructure and institutions, that it would attract investors and make Africa a great continent for what it truly is. Thank you, Nana.
Right, thank you very much, Mrs. Tamankak. Now we're coming on the platform, our beautiful, cherished viewers, audience, that of course you've had the time and the patience to listen and watch honorable panelists, you know, digesting these hot topics concerning Africa. So please, if you have a question or if you have something to say, kindly give me a wave or say hello so that I can look for you and we'll give you the platform. I think from now I can see Mr. Kunle Yarbempa, right? Yes, thank you so much for joining us. I have Mr. Chike, is that right? Thank you so much for joining us. And I have Chris also. Thank you so much. So yeah, please, if you have something or any question for the audience, then please give me a wave. All right, I can see Mr. Chike. You go first, please. Let's hear you briefly.
Hey, good morning, brothers and sisters.
Yes.
From Canada here. That's why I said good morning. I want to thank you all for your ideas and your thoughts. But something I want to say here, you know, as much as we talk about Africans in the diaspora, trying to support back home, set up structures, go beyond the nucleus of your family to help the bigger community that you find yourself in, there is always a saying that it takes 2 to tango. We're here today and we're able to do what we do because there is a system in place.
Right.
I come from back home. I've done a couple of stuff back home beyond my family that affects a larger community. I have one of your panelists here who knows me from back home. They call me the general. You're carrying over 150 boys, people, empowering them to do what they're going to do within their own hemisphere. But if you don't have a system that supports what you do, you can just go as far as you can see. We need a proper structure in place. That's why I say it takes 2 to tango. You do part, the government should do their part. We have a beautiful country. We are so rich. I recall working back then in immigration. And a man told me then, when I was still in Nigeria, that if France has 1/10 of what Nigeria has, they will be the richest country in the world, and it will take other nations of the world over a millennium to catch them. That brought tears to my eyes. We have a system, we have the government in place. We are educated here, but they would rather give that opportunity to someone else. We have to begin to be, like in the words of Julie Garland, be a first-rate version of yourself, not a second-rate version of somebody else. Do you believe in yourself? Do you believe in your brother? Do I believe in all the beautiful faces I see here? That is what we need to move Africa and move our little sphere to the next level. If I do not believe in you, I will still look for that Asian man, that American, that Caucasian to do the job when I know you're well schooled. We have lots of talented people here. But the first thing that comes to our mind as African is, hey, if I give this to Akin or if I give this to Nana, she will become better than me. Unhealthy rivalry. Nana is going to make more money. Her family is going to be better placed. We should begin to think out of the box.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing what I see where I work here. The Asians, once they come in, they see themselves, even the ones born here that cannot speak their language very well. They begin to look for, how do I better this person?
Right.
Can I say a black person? You're from Africa, not even Nigeria. And I begin to look at, okay, if I put this person in the right place, give him or her as much information as he or her needs, then she's going to be better off than me. We need to have a mind re-engineering. It takes two to tango. Let's begin to do the right things. Put the horse before the cart, and I believe that's going to take us to the next level. Thank you.
Splendid. Thank you so much. That was awesome one. I think Chris, Chris, not the panelist, but Chris, audience, I think your hand was up earlier. If you can hear me, please take that.
Oh, yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah, good evening. I'm Christopher. I joined in from Switzerland. So presently, I want to point out something that was talked about by the lady the last time. I think we have a problem of branding. Africa has a problem of branding. If your product is inferior out there, they won't look at you. Imagine when you call any Swiss product now, you know definitely it's top quality. So people look at us, you know, we don't have anything to offer, and we are much of a consumer economy rather than producer. You understand what I'm trying to say? So, and religion has really, sorry, I'm going to touch this, it has really done a lot of harm than good, actually.
Please flow.
Yeah, because religion, you know, before the advent of the colonial master and everything, we had our own religion, let me put it that way, okay? And we just imbibed everything, democracy and the rest of it. You understand what I mean? We never think of going back to structure our own, you know, our own thing ourselves. We had, back then we had different villages, different heads, different obas, different, you know? So I think we should actually go back to the drawing board. Look at what works for us. You understand? We don't have to imbibe the Western way that it brought in for us. There are structures. You understand what I mean? A lot of Pan-Africanists, they have tried to create a lot of like big companies and the rest. It's still the problem. It didn't work. For example, there in Nigeria, you have a steel company that hasn't produced steel for years. So how do you make the railroad? How do you understand what I'm trying to say? Metal and steel. So we need to start producing. You need to put your brands out there so people appreciate you more. It comes from there. So that's just what I want to add to this.
Thank you very much. And that is very true. In Ghana, we have one of the biggest tomato factories, but we import tomatoes. So it's really, it's a problem, very problematic. I can't see someone else's hand up.
Nana.
Yes.
Nana, can I just react 10 seconds to what he just said, because it's very, very important.
Yes, please, 10 seconds.
What I want to tell our brother from Canada is that I absolutely agree with what you're saying, but also remember but that, like I said, this was all by design. If I want to encourage everybody to go back and read the history of the partition of Africa, and then we begin to understand what we have been through and why we do things the way we do. If we understand the history, we will stop the blame game, and like I said, get these shackles that is all over us, and then start looking things from a different perspective. Until we get that, we will keep blaming each other, because the problem is, you said it takes two to tango, I agree, but the problem is not entirely us. We are just, suffering from these are just the symptoms of a bigger problem. What we see happening with Africans. So we have to go back to the drawing board, like you said, what happened in 1884. That's what we are suffering today. And our leaders have to take that responsibility. But it's not easy for them either, I can tell you that.
Right. Thank you so much for adding that. Placida, Awuna, I don't know if you have something to say.
Thank you, Nana.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. And
yes.
I quite agree with a lot of what everyone has said on this platform. And for me, I think because this whole problem has taken quite a long time, when there's an issue that has gone on for such a long time, it becomes cancerous, it becomes very difficult. That's always my challenge, because like here where we are, you find out that even from the diaspora itself, we don't appreciate one another. So you find out that if you go work for a fellow African, he treats you differently.
Yes.
And then by the time he sees the European, he treats them differently. I've had an experience myself, so it's something that we need to look at. If you see our fellow diasporans on the road that are Africans, they don't smile at you, but the European will smile at you. So truly for me, those little things count. And until we start at that level, until we begin to start liking each other and loving each other, it's not going to work. It's the love for humanity and for each other that the Europeans have that makes them to do things for the common good. But when you just love yourself and you think only for yourself, which is a big problem that it's going on, so we in diaspora, we have a lot to do. And I'm happy that this kind of fora exists. And I hope that from here, even as few as we are, or as few as you guys are, something can happen and each person can begin to multiply. I like what Chike says he's doing. I like what Abel suggested. We just have to begin to do those little things and become more courageous to get people back home. You can never let someone give you a chance to do something. Absolutely. You have to do it yourself. You have to take it by force. You have to be able to be courageous to make sure that the governments that we have in place begin to think differently. We have to contribute to the kind of government that we want to be in place so that we can get them to begin to think right. We have to have progressives, people who care for each other, who care about Africa, who have the passion that I can see Emma put up and all that to be in power. That's the way for me. I think these little things and these areas, I think it's where we need to begin to look at. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Placida. I know Ambassador's hand is up, but Ambassador, please hold on for me, Your Excellency. I'll come back to you. I think Kunle, your hand was up earlier. If you can hear me, please speak before I allow. Yes. Please
yes.
Take the stage. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kunle. I used to live in Finland, in Järvenpää, but I now live in the United Kingdom. I just want to say something that over the years, we've had like quite a number of pandemic hits Africa. We had like SARS, we had like, now we have coronavirus. What I just want to say is we're never prepared. So my question is, how prepared is Africa for the worst? If COVID-19 is not the worst, how prepared are we? How prepared are our health institutions? Looking at the medical institution, the research centers, how prepared, how funded are they? So I think what we should be looking at is more of like taking responsibility. What is our next step? Just looking at the team our next step perhaps should be the responsibilities that we're taking, the actions that we're carrying out. Looking at, food production. How sustainable is Africa? How sustainable are our communities? So I think for me, my own is just like the questions that we are asking ourselves and the actions that we're taking, the next steps that we're taking. Abel said quite a number of things that our remittance should be structured. Perhaps our remittance should not be just about giving money. It should be also given about sustainable resources, building infrastructures in our own little way. I think that's all I just want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's also very good points. But Your Excellency, you have the platform now. Please.
Thank you very much for this discussion, and I think it's been very fruitful. I just want to highlight a few things. On African history, we've produced so many good authors that has written up on history, written up on a range of things. I just think that people don't read African literature. And in the absence of reading African literature, how do you then reiterate what your history is? Because it shouldn't start now. I mean, Africa used to be the knowledge of the world at some point. We don't uplift those issues in whatever we do. We talk of it as if it has only started since colonialism. I mean, Timbuktu, the first scholars, it's just an example of history that nobody talks about. And I think understanding where you come from and having pride in where you come from starts from knowing who you are. That's number one. Number two, this idea that nothing goes right on the continent, I tend to disagree, because we dealt with the Ebola pandemic in the midst of limited support from the globe. We were able to contain that, and the spread we were able to contain. We should also talk about our successes and not just talk about the challenges that we face. Secondly, institutionally, I think we should talk about 54 countries when we talk about Africa. This thing that we blanketly talk about Africa as a country, because we're doing it ourselves in the conversation, then separates those success stories that is in existence on the continent. And then in terms of education, yes, many people get schooled in the West, but so does many people get schooled in the East. So we shouldn't, and so does many people, actually, scholars come from the continent itself. Highly acclaimed scholars. If I start mentioning them now, then we won't finish.
Right.
So we shouldn't create a picture that we do not have education there as well in the continent. My advice would be, look at the documentation that is being produced by the Ibrahim Index. Look at the documentation that is being doing solid institutions being produced by organizations like Accord, and then there's a whole lot of other institutional institute, the African Development Bank, to mention a few. Look at that as Africans and understand what is actually going on, and understand that we are making progress. Yes, we have got challenges that we have to address. Then we should say, how do we, as individuals,
right,
not just the government, give back to the citizens based on what is happening within this space? So I thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing with that. I think
what I want to ask is, we've been here discussing a lot of ideas and everything. The question is, are we living here to practice what we've been saying, or we are just here discussing because we want to discuss?
Come again. You mean?
Are we here as Africans? We are all Africans. So Keo is here. Mr. Hanu is here. We are all Africans. Let's take it. We are all Africans, and we are having a discussion about things affecting Africa and how to move forward.
Yes.
My questions to all of us and everyone watching is:
yes,
are we only doing this discussion because we feel that African Day is coming and we want to discuss about Africa? Or we are doing this and we live here to practice everything that has been discussed?
Right. So yes, our director is asking. I hope the long discussions we've had is not going to just end here on this platform, but of course we are going to do as we have said. Please over to the.
Because we have to start from somewhere.
We have to start from somewhere, and in this regard, I give two people to. Somebody saying good question. I give the chance to two people to answer that. One one woman, one gentleman. To be fair, so I think Barrister's hand was, or Barrister is smiling. So I don't know if you want to share.
Yes, I want to share. I want to agree with the ambassador. Yes, there's a lot of good things even Africans in diaspora are achieving beyond expectation. We have all that. What we're just looking at is what's lacking, what more do we need to do? So to answer the question, a lot of Africans both in diaspora and at home are working to do these things. Some people work behind the cameras, not the flashlights. Some work in front of the flashlights. Say, for example, I met Mama Africa, and I have never stopped talking about her restaurant. And I have compared that African restaurant with every other African restaurant I see. And I keep thinking she could do something, you know, to bring others into that field. So that's what we're talking about. So people, yes, people are working on the ground, people are practicing, people are trying their best, but we need to come together as a collective. And the other thing I just wanted to add is that we also need, I always talked about grassroots and one person at a time. In Europe, handcrafts are so expensive, but we have crafted men in Africa who earn peanuts. You know, so we need to value what we have. We need to appreciate what skills. Education is not going to college. And that's what sustains an economy. If you have people who are woodworkers, they're good at what they do, we need to begin to value those things. COVID has shown us how to value cleaners. We have to value those we call low skilled. They are not low skilled, they're actually highly skilled and priced and give value to their to what they produce. With good produce, packaging, we need to do that. Our cocoa is the best. Our shea butter is the best. So it's packaging. We have these things. So that's my contribution.
So you have had your I don't know, you've added your final words to
yes.
that.
Yes.
All right, that's awesome.
Thank you.
I think the gentleman who is coming for the gentleman in the house. Who is coming for the gentleman in the house? Anybody's hand up, or please talk to me so that I can hear. Anybody coming for the gentleman? Hey, women are winning, you know.
I can speak for the gentleman there.
All right, Abel, take the stage.
On behalf of all the humble gentlemen in the house. You see, one thing is this, we all in diaspora, we indirectly or directly, we are building the economy of the countries we are in. We pay a huge lump of money for tax every month, though we don't pay attention to them. We pay tax, we pay road tax, we pay insurance. We are contributing in loads of ways. And I would like us to know that for Africa to get to that point where we will be super proud of Africa, we need to contribute in one way or the other. The system might not be the best, that the infrastructures might not be the best, but that's where they need the Africans in diaspora. We've seen the better version, we've seen what we could do, but we have to look for the ways we can contribute back. We have to give our time to volunteer, we have to give our time. Our voice matters. We have to give our voice, our time, our resources, and of course, we have to show more interest in Africa. Africa is our continent. Of course, it doesn't mean the fact that you live in Finland. Finland is not your country. It is your country. They've done a lot for you. But still, remember, Africa needs you. They need your help. They need everything. And please, the last word from me is don't forget Africa.
Don't forget Africa. So thank you very much, Mr. Abel Adoji. So I'll go to Mrs. Stamanka for your final words, please. 10 seconds, and we are through. And
okay.
move on. Yes, please.
Thank you. I really want to wholeheartedly thank you for giving me this opportunity to express my views, and of course thank all the viewers and all the panelists, all those who are in this platform. Like the Madam Ambassador said, that a lot of good things have been happening in Africa. I definitely agree to that. A couple of things that I would want everybody that is listening to us today should take as a homework is to go back, and Madam Ambassador talked about the Africa Agenda 2063. Please read it. Know what the continent is planning to do. Familiarize yourself with all of the different points and all the different goals and objectives and stuff like that. And then another great thing that was not even mentioned today that has happened in Africa is the African Continental Free Trade Area that is supposed to take effect this July 2020.
Nigeria, to give us your final take on matters we have discussed today. 10 seconds, sir.
Okay, basically, two major things I would like to say here. Number one is we need to believe in ourselves. That's one. And then secondly, we need to match our faith with action. Yeah, for everything we profess as believers, we need to match it up with actions. We need to get practical and get real with what we know we believe or what we think we believe. You know, so much more than believing in yourself is the fact that you have to match up your faith with actions. Yeah, so these are the two major words I would like to leave, you know, in the minds of everyone out there.
Well, thank you very much, sir. We truly appreciate your time and your opinions on these matters. And moving on to Mr. Akin Akinsola from Think Africa. We've had a great time, sir. Your final words before.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll take 10 seconds. I think that I want to agree with Her Excellency on 2 points. The first thing is that we are making a lot of progress, and we do have very capable hands, you know, especially in our health system. For example, the ones who took over the Ebola thing didn't go as badly as it could have gone, even because we had all this thing. And the second thing is that I think that we talk about Africa too much as a unit, as though it's one thing. We should all remember that. We should also remember that it has 54 countries, and these countries are independent, sovereign countries, and we should, you know, keep that in our conversation as well. Those are my 2 points. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. I think Mrs. Tamankat's line was breaking and she couldn't end up, so I'll just give her about 5 seconds to round up, and then I'll give the platform to Mr. Hanu to give us summary, and then we'll have our cheers. Toast to Africa. We'll take a break, and then we'll have a toast to better Africa. Mrs. Tamanka, please, 5 seconds then to round up, please.
Yeah. Yes, what I was saying is that some of the achievements that has happened in Africa is the African Continental Free Trade Area, and I encourage every single African to read that, to know the changes that are going to happen. We are talking about creating, for instance, a single market. What are the advantages for us Africans when we have that? And also, because we've been talking a lot about where do we go from here? There is the African Diaspora Development Institute, which I encourage everybody to sign in, because that's a one-stop for all Africans. So please sign into that website and make sure that you familiarize yourself and register. We have to start speaking with one voice. And to round up, my dear darling sister, let us Africans stop the self-hate. That's my plea to everybody. Let us come together, respect each other, believe in ourselves, learn to trust each other, and Africa is ours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'll go straight on the line. I have Abubakar says, I'm living in Asia, but the best place to be is Africa. Our brothers are taking money from their own brothers to secure a job with a very poor salary. They call themselves as agents to link jobless people to the employers, but they eat your money. You will never hear from them. I think it means that like they spend your money, you never hear from them. So I will always try to watch your online TV show to be able to contribute my part. Of course, thank you so much. I am from Gambia, but today I want to go back to my country. But because I cannot go, my savings, I spend it all to come to Qatar. So sorry, dear. I stay 8 months now without securing a fixed job. It's all cursed by our own African brothers. It's so sad. We share in your sentiments, but take courage. And you're an African, you're born African. You can do this. I believe in you. You can do it. Yes. Faithful John, thank you. Dave, thank you so much for your time. Dave Bisson from NACO, thank you so much. It says we need a total overhaul of the leadership in order to be able to transfer our know-how successfully there. True. From NACO says, remember, most of those in leadership were once in the diaspora. The point is, are we ready for a true change? That is a big, big question. I think the current generation is aware of their roles and the beauty of going back, but with the same leadership in place, it's almost impossible. Do we all agree? And Fumi says, very true, so true. People are, sharing the same opinion with us. So thank you so much, all our viewers, and your comments so far. We truly, truly appreciate for joining us in our celebration of Africa. This is our Africa, our next step, our next step.
Hello, Fatima, and hello, all of our friends in Helsinki. We're really happy to send you this greeting for Africa Day. You know, you might not know it by looking at me, but I was born in Africa, in Nigeria. And last year, my wife Fumiko and I had a chance to go back to Nigeria, and we went to one of the villages that our UPF movement is helping with education and with microloans. We really want to see peace in Africa. And in fact, I've spent a few visits to Africa in the last year and a half, thanks to the UPF founder, Mother Moon. We were in Egypt, in Tunisia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, but our most memorable experience was in Senegal, because that's where True Mother held the Africa Summit. And at that summit, she did two very important things. The first thing was she went to Gorée Island to pray for all the victims of slavery and exploitation in centuries gone by. But then she spoke to President Macky Sall and to other heads of state and religious leaders and traditional leaders, and she told them of her vision of a Shin Africa, a heavenly Africa. She said, yes, Africa has been last in the past, but now it can be the first, because Africans are full of energy, and most importantly, they're willing to be humble before God, and in that case, God can bless Africa. For Fumiko and I, it was one of our most memorable experiences, and we thank you. And now we'd just like to send you a final greeting from London. Happy Africa Day!
And I have to hand over the platform to Mr. Hanu, one of the board members of UPF, who have made it possible to gather today. Mr. Hanu, if you are there, please take the stage.
Thank you. My summary is this was an excellent sharing, so many good ideas to be put into practice. I fully agree with Selom. Now is the time to practice, and that means my summary is let's see you tomorrow and day after tomorrow and day after that. And we will be working together for a better Africa and put all these great ideas. So I would really like to meet each one of you after this, so we don't remain here, but we go forward together. God bless Africa. Thank you.
And I just really want to use the opportunity also to thank everyone that has been in this platform. So think about the next step, our Africa, my next step. So you have something to think about now and to bring to the table. This is the reason why we have organized seminars like this. So let's toast to Africa.
To Africa.
To Africa. I would also like to use this toast. I would also like to use this toast to appreciate our graphic designer who did our graphic work for the African Day 2020. It's a very young, a Nigerian young man from Italy. And he supported us by doing our graphic work. His name is Denise. And if you have any graphic work whatsoever, you have talked about how you will support each other. So please contact us and we can give you his contact, and let's try to support one another. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So to
Thank you.
Africa, and I would also like to say that this Nana's TV channel, this is the only immigrants channel in the whole of Europe. This is for, our slogan is for us by us, and I'm the co-founder, and of course together with my director all the way in the States. So you know, Nana's TV is trying to go international. So wherever you are, you can reach us, and we
international.
Yes.
You're on your way up.
Connection is bad again.
Mr. Wanka, can you hear me? So Nana's TV is not for only Finland, but we also serve across board, all Africans in the diaspora. We are willing, ready to come.
Nana TV. Without Nana TV, we cannot have this live broadcast.
Yes,
so I really want us to toast. And please let's put our hands together for Nana TV.
Nana TV is on her way out.
Yes.
On her way out. Please, we are still live. All right. So this toast to Africa and all you wonderful. I am honored and pleased to meet all you wonderful men and women from Africa. And please, let's get together. Let's keep in touch. If you have anything, please send us a message on Nana's TV and we will be there. We, of course, will be at your service. Please, let us all be in touch. If whatever you have a job, whatever you are doing, you want to be broadcasted, of course, in the diaspora or in Africa, please don't hesitate to contact us and we will be at your service. Let's do this. We can do this, Africa. We can do this. Thank you, Mr. Kayo, for thinking about Africa in this way. And I love your mark. It says, well, keep calm. Yes, we are calm. Thank you so much, everyone. So, and of course, our beautiful audience out there, thank you. This is the end of our celebration of Africa, live on Nana's TV, brought to you, proudly brought to you by and UPF. Thank you so much to all our wonderful panelists, all our audience. Thank you. We truly appreciate all your opinions. We take them all
to Africa.
And we are going to
Africa.
To Africa. And of course, not forgetting our director. I know you had to sleep, but you are awake to